Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. My name's Nick Park, and I'm sharing a series of messages this week filmed here in Amsterdam, where I was at a conference, the Empowered 21 Everyone conference. And I shared yesterday in yesterday's Take 5 about how I had a chance encounter to meet with somebody that had impacted my life through books they had written and that I had read over 40 years ago. And that was Dick Eastman from Every Home Crusade and the Change the World School of Prayer. And as I was sharing with Dick Eastman and his wife Dee about the impact their books had had on me, I was so grateful I was able to do that. I could sense somebody just behind was waiting to talk to him and really listening in to our conversation. But I was concentrating on just sharing this with Dick. And when I'd finished sharing the story about how his books had impacted me, a voice behind me in an American accent said, wow, that's a fantastic story of how God moves. And I turned around, and listening in on the conversation was Rick Warren, the former pastor, retired now from Saddleback Valley Church in the United States, and the author of The Purpose-Driven Life and The Purpose-Driven Church. And so I just looked at him and I said, you know what, this is turning into an amazing day, because I've actually got a similar story to share with you. And I shared with Rick Warren how when we were starting Solid Rock Drogheda, God had really spoken into my spirit about the kind of church that we were to establish and how we were to go about it. And, you know, some of the people that I was working with and associated with in the Christian church at that time didn't really get what it was we were trying to do. They had quite a traditional idea of how church should be done. And it really got quite messy in the end and quite painful in the end. And accusations were thrown against me and Janice and everything else, but just because we were doing things a little bit differently. And I can remember at that time getting hold of a copy of Rick's book, The Purpose-Driven Church. And as I read through that book, you know what? God spoke to me, and it was just like the stuff that I had been thinking, the stuff that I'd been trying to articulate to others, and they were looking at me like I was crazy. And suddenly I'm reading it on the pages of this book, and I thought, I'm not crazy. There's somebody else here who can see things the way I'm seeing them right now. And that just was such an encouragement to me. And so I got to share with Rick Warren about the impact that his book had had on me and the development of Solid Rock Church in Drogheda. And one of the things that particularly that I remember is this, that Rick, at the beginning of that book, he described church growth. He talked about all these manuals on church growth that are basically telling you how to sell soap powder. If you do A, B, C, and D, then this will happen. And he said at the beginning of that book, The Purpose-Driven Church, he said, you can't make growth happen. God sends growth. But what you can recognize when growth is coming and get on board. And he used being from ministering in California, he used the illustration of the surfer. That when the surfer is out, the surfer can't create a wave to ride, but the surfer learns to recognize when a good wave is coming and learns to get on that wave. And then when the wave dies, to get off that wave and paddle out there and catch the next wave again. And I remember him saying as well, in that book that sometimes we need to stop asking God to bless what we're doing, and we need to start doing what God is blessing. And he actually at this conference here in Amsterdam said the same thing. He said the same thing. Stop asking God to bless what you're doing, but do what God is blessing. And so I had an opportunity to thank Rick Warren for the impact that his book had had on my life and on the church that I still lead at Solid Rock. And that was a great moment for me. But I want to say that my heart and my commitment is still not to ask God to bless what I'm doing, but to be a part of what God is blessing in the world today. And I pray that you will get involved in whatever it is that you see God is blessing and God is using to change the lives of others. May God bless you today. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.